Hello, this is Scott Barrett. In this short training video, I am just going to take you through all the buttons and functions within the transaction management section of the new My FLR Office website. So let's begin. I've entered into the website and I'm going to go into transactions. So I'm going to kind of explain what each of these buttons represent and what they do. In a previous video, I covered what an incomplete, so the status here, we have active, pending, incomplete. Please watch the video of an incomplete listing transaction. Obviously, don't see all the features and you have to activate that. Please watch the appropriate video for that. So let me just explain. Edit will take you into the data for that transaction. So if there was something that needed to be changed or corrected, this would be the appropriate place. It has the dates of the listing, the address of the property, the list price, the MLS number, year billed, annual taxes, tax or parcel ID, some of the functions of the community, the type of listing it is, seller contact information, if there's a co-listing aided, those sorts of features. Let me go back to the transaction. And the second button, which there's several videos, one of the critical components is providing compliance documents and other records that you find should be kept with the transaction specifically. And all the navigation of this is covered in several small videos. Please attend to the appropriate videos for that. And then remind me, basically a task management system that automates keeping you on top of your transactions. You're capable of setting defaults for all of these features. This particular tab is the marketing aspect, open house, dealing directly with the seller, compliance, post-closing, the seller services, pre-closing services, and such. And this just basically sets, let's go back to marketing. And so it says here, photography, you would be able to set how you want to be notified, when do you want to be notified from the time of listing. So for photography, to remind you that, hey, the photography needs to be completed for this, and then it will notify you appropriately. Again, you set these default under my account, remind me settings, and then they will post the same in all of your transactions. And from there, you can obviously modify any individual transaction where you may want modifications to that particular task. So once you set that task reminder, you hit the update button, and then as required or as you request, it's going to remind you of these tasks for that particular transaction. Let's go back to transactions, add a note, and simply this, if you want to just add some kind of notes, maybe you you talked to the seller, spoke, gave updates from showings, maybe feedback. It could be a note that you personally want in the transaction record to keep up to date what you've done in some of your correspondence or whatever you feel is appropriate to keep a note on. And then there's a checkbox that's automatically checked. It says notify FLR. That notification means that that note will be forwarded to the office. So maybe it would be that there's a price change, and you want them to be aware of it, or something else that is important for the staff to understand in working with you. So it would trigger a notification to them in addition to adding that note to the transaction record. So I'm going to just but let's just use that for sample purposes. So I'm going to submit that, and that note will be added to the transaction. The button basically is where you would go to see all of your notes. So the note is going to be date stamped. So when I added that note exactly today, which is 10/21/18 at 11:10 a.m. and 2 seconds. Who added it? I did. What did I add? That's my note. Okay, so your notes will be here so you can review them. And then system tracking. So system tracking is a little bit different. The system is actually tracking when you're uploading documents, getting things signed. So it's actually creating a history of things that are occurring as you're working with that transaction record in the background and recording all of those events and occurrences. So if again, if there was any need to go back and see something that we thought was being done or whatever, you have the ability to see that. We have a separate video where we talk about that you can forward emails or send emails or receive emails directly into the transaction through a custom email address for that transaction. And this is in history is where you would have access to those emails that were sent directly into the transaction, and you could review them or obtain them if you needed. So let's go back out of history, back to transactions. And now we have a couple other functions here. One is price, expiration date. These are basically where you would go to expedite a change in the listing terms. For this particular thing on listings, I'm just going to hit price. And what's really cool about our system is it really streamlines, makes it super simple to get this accomplished. So in this case, our current list price is $119,900. Let's say the seller has agreed to reduce the price to $115,000. It is sort of like our MLS system does. It automatically adds the comma 000 if this is checked. So 150 is all I got to enter in there. So I'm reducing the price with agreement of the seller from 119,900 to 115,000. So I just entered 115, hit submit. It's going to bring me back to a page where it's actually automatically generated the entire form. If I want, I can zoom in if I can't see it. And it already has the seller's name, the date of today to authorize this, the address of the property is inserted. It picked up the original date of the listing agreement, and that's the new price that we've agreed on. So this form is instantly ready to go. And so I have two options here. I can download the form. So if I want to download it and print it and go see the seller directly, no problem. The other option I have is I can just enter the seller's email address into this box. And then I can actually execute or send it for e-signing. So it's automatically going out to that seller now through email, through DigiSigner, and it's going to present it so that the seller can sign that document through their email, and it'll come right back to the transaction. Same exact process for expiration date. So your listing is coming up for expired. You have a conversation with the seller. The seller says, yes, I will agree to extend my listing with you for an additional 3 months. So you can then add that. You can use a calendar if you want. So it's going to start from today's date. So March, April, May, June. He's going to give me another 3 months. So I extended out from the original expiration date of 03/09/19 to 06/09/19. Hit submit. And it returns back a pre-completed expiration date extension addendum. As I need it, I can do the exact same process. I can download the form, go see the seller in person and have it signed, or I can send for e-signing by just the click of a button, and it will automatically go out for e-signing. Contract. So in this situation, you have a listing, and that listing is now got got an executed contract. So from the listing record, you simply click contract. Do you have both sides of the transaction? Yes or no? No, hit next. And then really what it's doing here is it's building the transaction record for the contract side of the transaction. So you have a listing side and a contract side. So they're identified in the back office as two different transaction records, one only pertaining to the listing and the other pertaining to the contract. So you just enter the data, obviously the executed contract date. So let's say it's today. The closing date is going to be out 1 month. Let's go back. Let's say it's November 30th. What's really intuitive about this system is it's going to ask you to enter data that's in correspondence to the contract, the executed contract, such as how many days for the escrow deposit to be received according to lines 29 and 30 of the contract, line 249 of the contract, how many days for the buyer's inspection period. At the top, it gives you the most common uses, but you can go through any amount of days. So let's say it's 10 days. How many days for the buyer for loan approval? Let's say that's 30. That's a common default. What is a lead source? Other. Is a transaction your personal primary residence? No. And you go through the transaction record. I'm not going to complete that. I just wanted to show you the features. Now, those three things, the days for the escrow deposit, the days for inspection, and the days for loan approval will now be triggered, and reminders will be sent to you in advance prior to those due dates so that you understand and meet those guidelines and requirements in the contract. So let's go back to transactions. And we go to open house. Here's your listing. So now let's say you're going to do an open house on that listing. You can come in here, you choose when the open house is going to occur. So this is the month of October currently. Let's say we're going to have this open house next weekend. Today is 21st, next weekend is 28th. I'm going to do my open house from 11 a.m. until 2 p.m. I hit add, and that's going to then take me and create some marketing correspondence. And this current one is download open house registry form. It informed the system to create your flyers and marketing pieces with all the correct dates and times of your open house event so that you have the marketing materials you need for your open house. So I'm going to download that and kind of show you what that just created. So it basically created an open house sign-in sheet that you can use right at the open house event. Let's go back to transactions. And the last one was withdrawal. So when you click on that, you got to tell us which type of withdrawal are you doing, a conditional or unconditional. It will create the form, complete it, and then it will send it through e-signing or downloadable, just like the price change or expiration date extension occurred. So that's the listing side. Let's go down and look at the buyers or the contract side. Is really the same thing. Edit the data, the documents, the remind me, which is your task management. That's going to keep you on top of all the tasks that you want to be reminded and complete for that transaction. You can add a note. You have the same history, which includes your notes, system tracking stuff, and any emails that were sent to the system. And then we have earlier extended. So those are kind of like the price and expiration date changes here. So in case that the buyer and seller both are on agreement to close prior to the contract closing date or need to extend that, this is a great way to immediately change that. So the current closing date that was agreed was the 30th. So let's say they move it up and they're going to agree to close on the 20th. Then you can hit submit. and it'll come back and create a record that says that we need those documents now, that addendum for that closing date. And the same thing if you need to extend. A cancellation, so you basically would come in here and fill in who, according to when the buyer signed the contract, when the seller signed the contract, the signing date, who's getting the escrow deposit, hit submit, and it's actually going to create the cancellation form and then set the transaction record to require that form to be completed and executed for the record. This particular video showed you all the navigation of all the features in the transaction record. Hopefully this is very helpful in you understanding. Each individual feature in here may have a separate video or deeper video on how to completely understand and navigate that function. So please attend to other videos to help you learn and navigate the back office system. Thank you very much for watching.